Sean, thanks so much. And welcome to The Angle. News breaking on multiple fronts. You will not want to miss a single minute of this show tonight. Al Franken's career on the ropes as a tsunami of Democratic senators are now demanding that he step down. And a bold and historic move by the president, moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing it as the capital of the Jewish state, sparking vows of violent protest across the Muslim world. We're going to talk about it in a rare interview with former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. Don't miss this. And you want to stay to the end of the show tonight, where I'll deliver a special message on Time Magazine's farcical Person of the Year choice. But first, the desperate political warfare of the left. That's the focus of tonight's angle. I'm going to explain to you what's really behind all these calls on Capitol Hill suddenly for Al Franken to resign from the Senate. At last count, 34 Democratic senators, look at them all there, are demanding that Franken step down in the wake of a string of harassment allegations that we've been hearing about now for days. Now, before you join the march up the castle, to the Castle Frankenstein to capture the monster, I have a word of caution. They've come down with a sudden case of feverish morality, but what it really is nothing more than a political calculation by the Dems. Look, they have two paths to destroy the president. The first is the Mueller investigation. We've been talking about how that's corrupt to the core. Last night with Jeannie Rhee, yet another prosecutor who shouldn't be on this case, we broke that story exclusively last night on the show. The second way they're going to try to destroy the Trump presidency is the war on women. Yeah, that old saw. They have now determined that it's worth sacrificing Franken, just like they did John Conyers, throw him overboard to save the political Titanic that is their party. Now, one, what does this do? It sets the precedent for the Democrats to try to drive Roy Moore from office should he win the Alabama Senate race. And two, this is the next step in the quest to impeach President Trump. Now, the left is brilliant. They're really, really smart at using the media to create a narrative and pound it all day long that quickly becomes a political bludgeon. The drumbeat of accusations and the calls for scalps advance the false premise that the left are all about protecting women. In fact, both Hollywood and the Democrats, think about this. They've objectified and pornified and abused women for decades. And the abusers, let's not forget, have been celebrated. Ted Kennedy, Bill Clinton, Matt Lauer, Kevin Spacey, Franken, Conyers, Weinstein, the list goes on and on. So I'll tell you this tonight. Be wary of the lynch mob that you join today, because tomorrow it could be coming for your husband, your brother, your son, and yes, even your president. And that's the angle. Now, someone who knows Democrats and the games they play like this better than anyone, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, it's good to see you. Welcome back from Rome. Let's talk about the games that are being played up there on Capitol Hill. There's all this newfound moral outrage about Al Franken and all these Democrats and John Conyers. What's really going on here, fast-forwarding to 2018?
First of all, I'm going to be very politically incorrect. Let's go back to who Al Franken was a month ago. He had the #1 best-selling book. He was a very funny guy. Democrats loved him. He was doing fine. And then things began to fall apart. Now, all of these nice people, none of whom have given back the money that they raised from Harvey Wiseman, none of whom Weinstein, none of whom have repudiated Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, none of whom seemed offended in the past, suddenly in a paroxysm of moral outrage, create a lynch mob. And what you saw today was a lynch mob. Let's not have due process. Let's not ask anybody any questions. Let's not have any chance to have a hearing. Let's just lynch him. Because when we get done lynching him, we'll be so pure. We'll feel so good. This is a party which is losing its mind. I think I'm being very politically incorrect, but let me just be clear. I think that the Gillibrands and others are literally losing their minds. I think that Elizabeth Warren is losing her mind. I think they're in this moment of existential enthusiasm, which in the middle of the Middle Ages would call flagellante. People would walk around, they'd beat themselves. They would beat themselves. They'd say, "Oh, I feel so much better now. I'm beating myself. Look how bad I am." These are people who grew up in a party which used to preach free love, which used to think that all of the hippiedom was wonderful, who used to think they somehow represent the future, and now they've suddenly curdled into this weird Puritanism, which feels a compulsion to go out and lynch people without a trial.
I just want everyone watching to understand that Newt Gingrich is here tonight, and he's standing up for Al Franken, okay? And I've got to tell you, I said last week that I didn't think he should resign because I think the voters have to have a say on this. The pushing people out of office.
Okay. Now, I've not read all the detailed various allegations.
It gets too lurid.
To the best of my knowledge, even the one which broke today, which was the horrifying last straw, which led Schumer to decide, as a great New York Paul, that he had to suddenly stand on the side of Puritanism, which is actually by itself pretty bizarre. As I understand it, that occurred 2 years earlier when he was a comedian. So let me say again, politically incorrect. Al Franken was a comedian. Comedians often do weird things. He was in the entertainment business. He was doing the kind of things people in the entertainment business do. Now, I have not, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see anything that they've said he's done since he was a senator. I don't think they've said.
I've tried to lose track. I think there are a couple allegations of inappropriate conduct, but I think it's minor stuff.
But the point is, we're in one of those weird American moments when running around lynching people feels so good.
Yeah, it feels good to them.
I mean, if you go back and you go back and watch the YouTube of Clarence Thomas.
I was just going to say my old boss.
Yeah,
you know how he felt.
Who, by the way, was wonderful and swore in Callista.
Oh, great!
A great moment, and fellow Georgia and everything. But you go back and you look at what he said about an electronic lynching. And then you look at what we're saying. I mean, again, Conyers had a lot of good reasons to retire, but on the other hand, no hearings. No witness.
No, there's no due process. If you're accused and you're a man, you're accused, you're done.
This is Venezuela, Cuba. This is every third world banana republic.
But they're doing it because they want their power back. They have no substance. They have no issues. It's the war on women redux for turning out the vote in 2018 and 2020.
I'm not even sure they're doing it for that reason.
Really? Oh, I do. I think get out the vote.
No,
I think that's all it's about.
I think they're doing it because they get together at a cocktail party, look at each other, and they go, "Oh my God, can you imagine how terrible this is?"
Because they want to hit Roy Moore, Newt, and they can't hit Roy Moore as long as Al Franken's sitting in the Senate. They can't go, "Oh, Donald Trump, you campaigned or you supported Roy Moore."
Let me ask an inappropriate question. What do we know about Doug Jones?
He's pro-abortion. That's what I know.
Yeah, he's pro-abortion. He's pro-gun control. He's left with. But what if it turns out next Tuesday that Doug Jones actually had an inappropriate date when he was 11 years old, and it was really inappropriate, and he shouldn't even be on the ballot? Are the Democrats now going to jump up and go, vote for Roy Moore? I mean, we're in a cycle which, by any reasonable, this is cultural anthropology time. This is watch the natives go nuts.
Speaking of nuts, let's go right to the Mueller investigation.
Okay.
So they got all these prosecutors who I believe are politically compromised. One worked for the Clinton Foundation, Jeannie Reese. She represented Ben Rhodes, who was the Deputy National Security Advisor. We broke that last night. And then she is now working for Mueller, Andrew Weissman. He got the Peter Strzok, who was struck from the team. But what about this investigation? And is this now not all tainted because Mueller did not remove these people or assembled a team with a political, seemingly, at least on the surface, a political axe to grind against his president?
When they first appointed Mueller, I tweeted that I thought he was a very responsible person. And then I watched who he began to hire. And then I looked at his own law firm, which, by the way, gave
Wilmer Hale,
which I believe gave 99.18% of its money to Hillary.
That little. Mm.
Yeah, only 0.82 to Trump. And I began to look at all this stuff, and then I began to think about how they're doing this. Hillary's top aides clearly lied. Not a single indictment, not a single conviction.
Immunity, it looks like, for Cheryl Mills. So
Hillary is never put under oath, because you can't get them for perjury if they never swore. Okay? Now you get to, it's time to go after the Republicans. And I would say that, and I say this in all seriousness, I mean, I'm making fun about the Franken situation. If Hillary had not lost, we would be mired in the deepest level of corruption in American history. Mueller is corrupt. The senior FBI is corrupt. The system is corrupt. And until you get back up and say, and realize how really, truly corrupt this is, I mean, there's a sickness here. My granddaughter Maggie got me to read a fascinating book about murder in Osage County in the 1920s. And everybody in the county law enforcement was corrupt. And the people who came in, ironically, were the FBI, who were the honest outsiders. What you now have is the Osage County corruption at the level of Comey and Mueller and that entire system. And I mean, I think it is frightening. If you believe in the rule of law and you believe in America, what we are learning is genuinely frightening.
Finally, Jerusalem, moving the embassy to Jerusalem. There's all the elites in Europe are up in arms. Theresa May, Merkel, they're all going.
It's so lovely to know that anti-Semitism is alive and well in Europe. The fact is, the only country in the world which is not allowed to name its own capital is Israel. I think what Trump did today was courageous. I can also tell you, having talked with the vice president this afternoon, this was systematic, it was thoughtful, it was strategic, and they believe it strengthens their hand in the end at getting to a peace agreement.
Newt Gingrich, it is always great to see you, and give my best to the ambassador. You're an ambassador's husband now, and you got double duty.
The State Department calls a trailing spouse.
Oh, a trailing, never trailing in our show. Great to see you, Newt.